And what that means for me is I have not gotten high since July 27, 2011. Couple housekeeping issues. Please remember, if you go out to smoke, don't go through the Starbucks door. Make sure you go around to the other doors on the other side of Starbucks there. And let's try to remember to get our cigarette butts in the receptacles that are out there, because they're all over the ground. So we are in the working together with houses, chapters, associations, and alumni panel. And the traditional halfway house that led to the formation of Oxford House was beset by an adversarial we versus them culture that often pitted the residents against the authority figures in the house. The we versus them culture detracts from the culture of recovery. Early on, Oxford House recognized that an egalitarian and democratic culture could alleviate the we versus them culture and keep the focus on the achievement of comfortable recovery. In many states, houses, chapters, and state associations all work together, recognizing the different roles of each. Sometimes, however, there is bureaucratic overreach, and this should be avoided. One of the biggest challenges is fostering democracy in houses and chapters. The system is purposely rigid to foster democracy by its emphasis on house meetings, election of officers, the equal sharing of expenses, and the autonomy of each individual Oxford house. It's important in all houses and chapters that everyone be treated equally. By establishing term limits on house officers, everyone has the chance to rise to the occasion, accept responsibility, learn leadership, and strengthen sobriety. It's also important for Oxford House outreach workers to serve as resource persons for residents, teaching them how the Oxford House system works, but like Tom Sawyer, challenging residents to do the work themselves. Since membership in a chapter or state association is always voluntary, emphasizing fellowship over enforcement and education over authoritarianism, it is necessary and builds membership. While housing service committees play as an important educational role, members need to remember that their role is to act as helpers, not as enforcers or bullies. Chapters and state associations have an important role to play in supporting individual Oxford houses and their residents, but at all times, they need to recognize the autonomy of each individual Oxford house. The panel will discuss what Oxford houses, chapters, and state associations can do to build constructive relationships with each other. And just a reminder, this is being filmed, so try to go out to the sides around the camera and speak loudly in the microphones when asking questions at the end. So our first panelist is Justice Simmons. He is Oxford House alumnus and outreach in San Antonio, Texas.
Good morning, family. My name is Justice, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means to me is I haven't found it necessary to have a drink or a drug since March 8th of 2015. Thank you. All right, so just by a show of hands real quickly, how many of you have ever read an Oxford House manual? Awesome. Okay, second show of hands, how many of you have ever read an Oxford House chapter manual? Okay, slightly fewer hands. Okay, how many of you have ever read an Oxford House World Services manual? Even fewer. Okay, so it's good to see some hands that went up for those. What I'd like to do first is encourage you to pick up those manuals and read them, because education is key. One of the first things I did as a resident, and it may have been for the wrong reason, is I picked up a manual and I read it. And my reason for that is because I didn't want anybody to know more than me. But for whatever reason, I picked it up and I read it, right? And it's been really beneficial to me ever since. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. Working together with houses, chapters, associations, and alumni. Who are the active members in your area? Oh, it didn't go to my slide. Hold on a second. Well, first, let's identify the active members of your support, right? So identify them. How do you identify those people? Well, you probably should show up to the meetings. So show up to a chapter meeting, show up to a state association meeting, show up to an alumni meeting. As residents, you're absolutely welcomed at your alumni meeting, so show up there. Typically, there's going to be a telephone list that's going around, right? And that telephone list is going to be of the active members, either in the chapter or in your regional association or your state association or alumni. And if for some reason there isn't, then create one. Be that person that says, hey, let me get all of your phone numbers so you can identify who the major players in your area are. Participate and engage. It's really important to actually be there, be present, and participate in what's going on. Listen and find out what's happening and participate as much as you possibly can. Effective communication, unity, and being a team player. Those are really super important in making sure that you're learning to work together with other people. So, who are those active members, right? New phone, who it is? Get to know those people. Give out your telephone number. Pick up other people's telephone numbers, because this is a we thing, right? Like, I don't do this alone, and I most certainly didn't stay sober or get sober on my own. So I need to incorporate all the other people that are in my community, because Oxford House is us, not me, right? So let's take a look at who the real MVP is, right? That's you. You're the real MVP. And remember that we have one common goal. So that common goal is to achieve and maintain long-term sobriety and to help one another by sharing our experience, strength, and hope through replication of the Oxford House model and promoting one another in our recoveries, right? So you are the real MVP. You are the major player. I can't control you and I can't control what you do, but I can control me. So that means if I take a stand to be that major player, even if you're in an area or in a house or in a situation where you don't feel other people are perhaps being as involved, all it takes is one person to be the catalyst of change. So be that person who enacts change in your area. Good communication. Good communication requires more effort on the sender than it requires on the receiver. So that means if I want for you or anybody else that I'm trying to communicate with to understand me, it's my responsibility to really pay attention to how it is that I'm trying to send this message to you. And even more so, how do you receive messages? I have to listen even harder. I have to make sure that I give you an opportunity to let me get to know you, so I can find out which way is best for me to communicate with you. That is my responsibility. Don't destroy relationships, build them. There's two things that can destroy any relationship. That's unrealistic expectations, right? I can't expect you to do what I'm not willing to do. Period, right? And poor communication. If I don't tell you what it is that I need or what it is that I would like from you, then I can't be mad if you don't do those things. The best way that I can do that is by showing you, right? Learning to use my words, learning to act with intention. Those are things that I get to do today. So 5 tips for effective communication. Communicate relentlessly. Simplify and be direct. I don't know about y'all, but I need things to be broken down into simple bits for me. Like, just break it on down. Please don't go all the way around the bush. You're taking me to Guam to get me down the street. Like, just break it down in simple terms for me. Listen and encourage input. Listen is first, right? So I've got to open my ears and allow you an opportunity to communicate with me, and I have to actually listen to hear you, not listen to respond, right? And encourage your input. Illustrate through stories. I know y'all some storytellers out there, right? I know I'm a storyteller. I've told a whole lot of them. And affirm with actions. My actions tell a story all of its own. I was taught very early on in recovery to stick with the winners, and I was taught that the winners, you can tell who they are by what their feet are doing, not by what their lips are telling you, right? Hashtag don't talk about it, be about it. Bonding and unity events create a strong support team. So what we're talking about here is all these levels of support, right? Chapters, houses, associations, alumni. These are all tiers of support. How many of y'all have ever seen that like tier of support pyramid where it's got, yes. Okay, so it's all about support. So how do you create a really supportive environment? Well, you have to get to know each other, right? 9 times out of 10, somebody who knows you or likes you is willing to do something for you. If you have no idea who I am, you're less likely to do something for me. Now, granted, if we are being of service, then maybe my recovery program will be like, okay, sure, I'm willing to help. But I'm more likely, like if I have a relationship with you, if we've sat down and broke bread together or played volleyball together, you have an open line of communication with me, you can contact me and I will be right there willing to help you, all right? So bond. Not only that, it's fun. I know I didn't get sober to not have fun in recovery. And we have fun in recovery in San Antonio. I hope y'all are having fun in recovery where you're at. And if you're not, start doing it. Start hanging out. All it takes is one person with one idea. Hey, let's barbecue. Somebody make some macaroni and cheese. All right, so let's go over some tips for being a team player, because being a team player is real important. Number 1, don't be a jerk. Don't be a jerk. Nobody likes that guy or that girl. Nobody. And it's really hard to be helpful when you're being a jerk to somebody, right? So like, love and be kind. Not everybody is gonna vibe with everybody else's personality, but you don't have to be mean to one another. Live by example. That means that you are in control of your own day-to-day destiny, right? So like, do the things. Go to meetings or whatever it is that your recovery program mandates for you, right? Like be a full participant in it. Start to encompass those principles in your life and let it show through your actions, right? That is how you live by the example. Reach out for help. Please don't wear a cape. There are no superheroes. As a team, we can do so much more collectively than any one person can. Not to mention the fact that burnout is a real thing, right? And if you're trying to carry the load all by yourself, that is so unhealthy. You have a bunch of people who are willing, and if you don't have people that are willing, create them. Grab that newcomer who just got into your Oxford house and take them with you. Bribe them with tacos or with coffee if you've got to. Just get them to go with you, right? Teach them everything that you're doing. Remain positive and upbeat. Boom. Right? Smile. It's infectious. Be accessible. Return phone calls. That's a real big one, right? Be accessible. Return phone calls. Please answer the phone. You have no idea who's on the other end or just how much they need you. Each one reach one and each one teach one. And number 6, have fun. Have fun. Share that fun and share that experience with everybody else. You know, I am so grateful that I've had an opportunity to get up here and share with you all. Thank you so much for your time. I'll pass it on to someone else.
The next panelist is Jess Wise, Oxford House resident and outreach in Oregon.
How y'all doing? All right. So I want to talk about teamwork more at a house level. Where teamwork starts at. It starts in the interview process. You know what I mean? We all sit down as a house, as a team, and we interview the person coming into our house. You know what I mean? We're not on cell phones. We're not, paying attention to other things. We're giving our undivided attention to the person that we're interviewing. So, it takes teamwork to make the dream work, right? You know what I mean? We're all here for the same reason. Most people don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about mostly is, how we present ourselves to the newcomer, how we invite them into our house. Kind of like Justice was talking about, we need to take them under our wing, guide them, give them advice, talk to them, show them that that's what we're here for, is to give them the help that we got when we were accepted into an Oxford house. Excuse me, PowerPoint's all right. So, excuse me, all right, let's see. So, teamwork, it fosters creativity, if we're helping others, I'm losing it here, let's see. Nervous! First time on the panel, so I did not start by telling you my clean date is February 13th, 2014. I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic. I was very much both. So anyway, it fosters creativity and learning. Creativity thrives when people work together. If you are accepted as a housemate, and people are giving you their undivided attention and paying attention to you, you're gonna be more, you're gonna have more courage to come up with your own thoughts, your own, ideas. It blends complementary strengths, people realize, hey, I'm the same as them, we have the same strengths. Gives them more courage, gives them, it teaches conflict resolution skills, promotes a wider sense of ownership. I have a stake in this, just as much as anybody else in this house. It's okay to say you're wrong, because they trust you. They know that you're not going to lash out at them. They know that you're going to be understanding. You're going to help them. You're going to come up with a solution together. And it also encourages healthy risk taking. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and, express this idea I got to my house. I know they're not going to, dog me out or anything. They're going to listen, and we're going to come up with a solution together. Basically, my whole experience is, when I first moved into a house, I wasn't quite sure what I was doing there. My house was accepting. I see it time and time again with new people that come in. They aren't quite sure what they're doing, but accepting houses, people that are sitting there paying attention, like I was saying in the beginning, and they're more than willing to listen to them, take them as they come and just sit down and work out, schedules and just, be supportive. That's a big thing, I think, in teamwork. And show them that you care, show them that you love them, You might not like everybody in your house, but we do love them, We do care where they're going, We want to see them clean. We want to see them thrive. Getting jobs, getting cars, whatever that is. That's what we want to see. That's all I got. Thank you.
Great job.
So our next panelist is Tisha Roberson from Oxford House Alumna from North Carolina.
Hey everybody, my name's Tisha and I'm a woman living in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is that I have not found it necessary to use any mind or mood altering substances since July the 26th of 2014. If nobody's told you today, I love you. So I'm a person that genuinely loves a whole lot, and some people are like, how do you say that to everybody? But it's just who I am, so I like to reflect it. So not only do I love everyone that's in Oxford House, I love everyone in general. And we are here because we're learning and we're growing together, and we're going to be able to take that back to our communities. We're going to be able to keep these generational curses from being repeated inside of our children, so it's vital that we be a part of. It feels so good to be a part of. I was put out of everywhere, I wasn't welcome. Yeah. So when I get to North Hills Oxford House, there's women living there. Yes. The women that are living in that house, well, two of those women that were there when I was there are actually going to sit beside my mother at my wedding. And I'm saying all of those things is because we build relationships that are lasting friendships that are going to go far. We're going to help each other's kids. We're going to go to graduations together. We're going to have weddings. And we're going to help the newcomers grow as they come in. So being alumni, what that means to me is that when houses need to be connected to services, like people move in and they need food boxes, or people are moving in and they don't have toothpaste and a toothbrush or pillows to lay their heads on, that we're able to come together as we've moved on to join our resources and raise those funds to be able to give back. Because somebody gave me every one of those things when I came into Oxford House. I had a bag with some papers in it that said my name. But when I left Oxford House, I had so much more than that. You know, and it's not about the material things. It's about having what we need to get up and show up for work. It's about what we need on the inside. We need people to be able to build us up and tell us that they care about who we are as a human being. Someone to know what your kids' names are. You know, we're having real conversations with people. When he talked about returning the phone calls, I love calling the houses in Wayne County, and I do it often. Weekly. And the relationships that I built with those ladies, I see them passing those things on to other people. And it is precious when you see it get to work together as a whole. It's like, this is what worked for me, and this is what I get to keep doing for someone else. See if there's anything else I want to focus on. So one of the biggest things I realized in my recovery is that when you don't walk in front of someone and you don't walk behind them, that means you're beside them. No matter where you are in your recovery process, when someone is beside you, that's how you keep moving. Last year, I got to witness at the women's conference a young woman who had 9 days clean and sober. How freaking amazing would it be to come to Oxford House World Convention, went 9 days clean and sober? That young lady, I'm sure, is going to go so far. And, you know, because that's what we pour in each other. We prove that it's possible. So when I talk to people and they know that I'm alumni, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything. I can remember going into meetings in early sobriety, and I didn't need to know too much from the person with 3 years, but you got 5 days, how'd you do that? You know? And so when we're going into a house and we're new and we're fragile and we're doing those things, take them out for coffee, go to the chapter meeting, show up, be a part of the state association, know what's going on so that the houses can continue to open, so that we can have more recovering people in beds and getting their lives back together. I think it's pretty cool to show up at a state association meeting and know what's going on with the statistics, and just to get to know other people from around the state. I think it's pretty amazing that people came to our state to help us start our alumni association. I think it's great when I go to a chapter meeting and I see people taking part of and showing up for roles, and, you know, taking those minutes and being accountable for being the treasurer, and, you know, taking a box of donuts to somebody's house like on a Saturday morning and just like reading meditation books is something that I hear in my area so often. There's a lot of ways to show up. Just be who you are and be genuine and be transparent and care about what's going on with the next person. And we're just going to keep recovering. Thanks for letting me share.
So our next panelist is very antsy. Can't wait to get up here. We might have to put a timer on him, right? We got a saying at my home group back home, this ain't supermarket sweep, wrap it up, right? So it's Dan Hahn. He's the Senior Outreach Coordinator for the state of Oklahoma.
My name's Dan. I'm an alcoholic. Used many other things alcoholically. Been sober since July 18th of 2007. So, you know, you come into this panel and we have all these different, first off, it's great for all of us to be here, right? We're all here together. So I'm gonna take a shot in the dark. Okay, I'm just gonna make a guess here, and it's something that we all want. I would hope. So what I want, and I strive to achieve it every day. What we want is houses that are successful. We all want that, right? Because when houses are successful, people are leaving and staying sober, right? Okay. We want people from those houses to be inspired to help open other houses, right? Okay, and then we want it talked about in this in the write-up in the program that we want houses that voluntarily go to chapter and voluntarily do those things, right? On a volunteer basis, get involved. And we want that chapter to be healthy so they can assist when houses inevitably get off track because people have come and gone, and we want the ability to do that. We want our outreach workers to be able to be out in the community doing the things they need to do to help recruit new members, not having to be covered up with more problems than they can fix, right? So it's a self-ran, self-governed organization, correct? So we want that. We all want that, right? And then we want to have those chapters given up to a state association that works to help solely to support the chapters and make sure that they're supporting the houses properly. Houses sitting at the bottom. Okay, and then we want alumni. And alumni, we want them involved, right? Because they serve a multifold purpose, but mainly what the tradition says is to give back. Okay, so we want all those things. And and a lot of times what we encounter is that there's certain gaps that prevent that from happening. Okay? And what's the common thing we all hear? The common thing we all hear, we can't get anybody involved. We can't get anybody involved. People they don't want to help. And in the rooms, they talk about 10% of the people do 90% of the work. And that's pretty accurate comment. It's been around since any of us were born, right? And sometimes we get moments of greatness and we exceed that, and boy, you got to take advantage of it when you do. So, all of that has to fit together. And those of us that care about Oxford House are constantly chasing it. And we're all running around saying, well, if we just could get people involved, if we could just do this, if we could just do that. Well, there's the only way that I've seen the successful approach to achieving that is the people at the very bottom level. As an outreach worker, I've attended thousands of chapter meetings, right? And I can walk into a chapter meeting, it doesn't matter where it is. And if I walk into that chapter meeting and I sit down and you have the binders messy and the folks leading the meeting don't have their agenda, or the chapters owe dues, people aren't current on their dues, which is something I would hate to see that because I wouldn't be able to sleep if I saw that happen, right? And you see those things happen, what should we say at that point? There is no way in God's green earth that you're going to have a healthy chapter with unhealthy houses. We don't want to use the word sick houses because they need help. And you hear people say our houses are sick. Don't say that. Don't say that. You have unhealthy houses. Okay, so when you can't get all of those things to fit together, it's a really simple solution. And I say this so much that people get tired of hearing it. I wish I had $1 for every time I've read it. And it's the fourth tradition of Oxford House, about the third paragraph. It talks about, and I wish it said a few more words, but if we really think about what this is saying, the answer to everything we do is right there. It's real simple. An underlying principle of Oxford House is that each individual member has the ability to be responsible for himself or herself. Living within an Oxford House provides both the opportunity and motivation for all residents to regularly attend AA and or NA meetings. The example of Oxford House members going to AA or NA meetings on their own is contagious. So is chore completion. So is paying your rent on time. So is acting right. It's all contagious, right? It has been the experience of Oxford House that participation in AA or NA or chore completion or rent payments or whatever it is extremely high in an environment where one individual can see another individual with the same disease reaping great benefits for AA and or NA participation, or refuge recovery, or a Monsignor or a Buddha or whatever it is. But laying in your room and watching Dr. Phil is not going to get it done. Members of our houses, and this ties this all together, if you want all of those levels to be successful, you have to start at the house level. Okay, because you can't build it on a leaning tower. Okay, so when you get into situations and you're working with new houses, you know, I've never, in years of being in Oxford House, never walked into a house and been stumped about what the problem is. Never, I'm batting 1,000 on that. It's always a lack of recovery, whatever that person's direction of recovery is. And so in order to get successful alumni, they are going to have evolve through that process of, you know, being the new guy in a house, getting taken to a chapter meeting, seeing the chapter meeting run effectively. We talked about us versus them. Well, the quickest way to create a us versus them is to have members that aren't there for the right reasons. And why they should be there is because nothing assures immunity from return to use as intensive work with other alcoholics or addicts. So the people that you have at the chapter level are there for the right reasons to serve others. But when we sit there and try to orchestrate that whole system and prop it up with demands, we create us versus them. The quickest way to cure people not getting involved is to find people that are there for the right reasons, which is to help others. Like the person comes up and says, calls me on the phone, "Hey, I'm house president." Oh. Okay, we're there. It's all about service and giving. So to tie it all together, to end up at the very top, which are really in the top because it just goes back and forth. But to get to the level of alumni, through that whole process, there has to be attraction, service to others, and then one of the most important things, and I think that Oxford House as a whole, and I think you would all agree, struggles with it, is people don't want to be the bad guy. And in the previous panel, they talked extensively about how to effectively rid ourselves of problems. So all of this ties together through recovery. Does that all make sense? Thank you.
Okay, so I think we were missing somebody, but we're gonna keep it rolling, right? And you know, we had talked in another panel too, and like personal recovery is key. And I mean, Dan summed that up, and he hit a lot of things that I always hit on also. And every time you like, it's very evident to know when you walk into a house, like whether there's recovery going on or there's not, right? You can, when you practice a program, you can walk in and feel that aura when you get there, you know, and like if you don't feel that aura, then like, you know, that's where our problem is. You know, so we're gonna do Q&A, and like, just remember, like, take this stuff back to your house, right? Chapter is important. Unity is like key for everything. And I know Marty always says it, bring a box of donuts wherever you go, you know, but so I got them on my socks. I'm trying not to eat them, right? You know, so does anybody have any questions? No, we're all good. That's like a silent meeting. You gotta go to the microphone.
How you doing? My name is AJ. I'm from Washington State. I'm the chapter HSR for Chapter 1. So, my scenario is our house opened in January, and 2 months after it opened, I moved in, and 1 month after me being there, I went to my first chapter, and I got voted as the chapter HSR. I stepped up immediately. And I care a lot about this house. I care a lot about Oxford. It's my first time in Oxford, and I just want to see my house grow and thrive. And I learned about the 5 stages and the 4 principles and all this stuff. But my problem in my house is half of them, to be blunt, don't give a shit. They're there for cheap rent. And when I talk about things that are important to the house or I bring up issues, it's always playing fuck games and they're joking around or they're messing with me just to get a rise out of me to piss me off. And I'm bringing up serious issues that need to be resolved. And when it comes to people coming in for interviews, let's say, for instance, they're on the MAT program and someone comes in and they're on methadone or Suboxone and some of the guys are against it. Well, they're on methadone. Nope, we ain't voting them in. But it's a 50-50 thing in our house where half these guys are clicked up having that, and the other guys will agree with me, but don't want to start shit with the other guys. So it's just a bunch of drama bullshit, and I don't know how to deal with it. And it's almost to a point now where I'm trying to step up and be the leader in the house, but there's no house manager. It's not how it's ran. And I'm concerned that if I keep stepping up and trying to do the right thing, that these guys are like, oh, fucking kick him out. He's going to ruin our house. But I'm trying to save the house. So it's like, I just don't know what to do.
Help somebody.
So I think summing up to what the question is, right? Sounded to me like, how do we deal with those people that think they're the boss, right? Or it's their house.
Yeah, well, there's people that don't care.
Anybody? Okay. Anybody that doesn't care?
Doesn't want to be involved.
Okay. So it takes how many percent to get in?
80.
How many to get out?
50.
Pretty sure they need to change their address or change their attitude or change their addresses. I mean, being in recovery is about living with principles.
Right.
Right? And having integrity.
Right.
There's nothing like walking into a house to see the people that have been there the longest or don't care, right? And you got a new guy walking in and he sees that and thinks that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's not okay, right? Oxford House is not cheap rent.
Right.
Right? You pay equal expense. It's not cheap rent. If you want somewhere for cheap rent, I'm sure you might find something on Craigslist. Probably not, though. Mm-hmm. Right? Not today, anyway. So you guys need to come together as a house, and it might be time to start voting people out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Integrity is key.
Right, and I've thought about doing that, but I want these guys are gonna I'm dead serious. These guys are like, oh no, kick him out, and it's a 50-50 thing.
Disruptive behavior is not holding people accountable.
Right.
And if you have an issue, call somebody from the chapter.
So, of course, I'm in complete agreement with what they're saying. But if you also have some awareness about what's going on in your community and where the other houses are at, so guess what? All of us come into a house in a different space. Not all of us come from the same type of backgrounds. So just because one Oxford house is not for you, it doesn't mean that another Oxford house is not for you. Some people that aren't willing to change their behaviors need to move along to a new place. That doesn't mean we're displacing them. It means that you're protecting your sobriety and your house as a whole so that we can continue to open up other houses. So what I always suggest to the women that I talk to on a pretty much often basis, I was going to say daily, but that's not true, is that where the other houses are at that may have some people who have some longer-term sobriety, and you keep those numbers handy so that when someone is being moved out for disruptive behavior, give them some suggestions. That's how I stay clean.
Yeah. Good job.
Hi, my name is Miles of Oxford House Meadow Park in Texas, San Antonio, Texas. Texas. No, in Texas we do have a big machine that's there, and it's cool. And I walked into it. I've been involved on a chapter level and even on on a regional level. But on the plane ride over here, I sat with the guy who's out of Wisconsin, and they only have 9 houses, and so he's talking to me, he's asking me these things, and I'm wondering what is that process of growth on that other level? Because they have one chapter I think with 9 houses, but they're needing more support. On a regional level per se, and they have that growth. So what is that process like to get to a point where you can have a state association or, to grow outwards of numbers if you only have 9 houses in a small area?
So it's a real easy. That's a really easy. It's an easy answer, yet it's difficult. So I know a little bit about that situation, and I'll throw some examples out. You look at Kansas. The houses were started in the meeting halls. There's never been an outreach worker there. They have 120 houses, whatever, in that state. Okay, and if you tried to do that 50 more times, start with one house and end up with 125 with no outreach, I'm not God, but it probably wouldn't happen. It's been attempted before, right? Those 9 houses have to come together as a group, read their manuals, and get everybody in the meeting hall, and eventually it'll grow. You know, I'll give you every penny I make over the next 5 years. I'll give you every paycheck I have if you can find the word contract or outreach in that house manual. Okay? So they have to just come together and focus on the health of their houses and start from square zero. A lot of areas will sit back and say, we need help. We need people to help us. Well, it's not always that way. We don't have contracts in every state. We don't have outreach in every state. But we got to this point with a bunch of people that didn't have outreach, didn't have UAs, didn't have all these things. So Wisconsin needs to just shrink down and focus on each individual house and not be worrying about what's going on out there for a little bit. That would be my answer.
Hello, my name's Angelica. I'm from Dallas, Texas. Hey, I have been the female HSE in Chapter 34. So my question is this: I've had some calls about people attending 12-step meetings in the houses. So these are like really most senior members that have been there over a certain number of years, and how to bring that up at a house level, because I've actually heard about it actually in another house as well, where there are very senior members that are living there. And somebody had mentioned to me that in their traditions, it says that it's a suggestion. And from what I understand, if it's in your house rules, and it's supposed to be 3 or 5, whatever the house rule is. And so it's 12-step meetings, like AA, NA, or CA, but some people choose to do other meetings that are maybe Celebrate Recovery or Smart Recovery, things like that. So the question mainly is, like, how do you hold your house members accountable if you come to meetings and they're actually saying they're attending 3 or more meetings a week, but you have a suspicion that they are not?
Justice?
So Oxford House is where I learned how to have difficult conversations. It's where I learned how to use my voice, right? So if I'm in a house meeting with my housemate and I'm afraid to speak my truth, then that's on me, right? So you have to get to a place where you're able to speak your truth to your housemate. If you have a suspicion, then you should be having a conversation, no matter what it is, right? So bring that to the table and allow the democratic process of your house to stand. You can make a suggestion in your house meeting. I would also take a look at whatever your house guidelines are. If your house guidelines say that you're supposed to be making recovery meetings and it's 3 a week, then I would remind the house of that. And if you're suspicious, then by all means, talk about it, bring it to the table and make a suggestion and allow your house to vote. But not saying anything is not being true to yourself, and self-betrayal is the worst kind of betrayal. And you're also not being really effective to your housemates, because they need you as much as you need them. So if you're not speaking up about them not participating in recovery, then you're not participating in the in the rehabilitative support that they moved there for. So,
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeff. I have not touched a drink or a drug and have lived in an Oxford house since April of 2014. I have a home group. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. I have sponsees. If that part was not in this picture, then I would not be part of an Oxford house. So when you discuss the facts, this is my experience, that the more recovery you spend outside of your Oxford house and bring to your Oxford house, that includes patience, tolerance, and acceptance, because you are not going to get the votes you want all the time. most of the time. The motions you put on the floor, you are not going to get what you want all of the time. That is why recovery is key to my living in an Oxford house and being able to be an active member in chapter, in housing services, etc. So get involved, but time. One argument over a chapter meeting table, a state association meeting table, a weekly business meeting table is not going to be every future argument. Give yourself time. Please go to meetings. And if you do things like this is what I was told when I got there. Go to meetings. Oh, excuse me. Don't pick up. Go to meetings and talk about how you feel. It's that simple. But if I do not practice recovery outside of the house, I'm not effective inside of the house, period. And we're not going to get our way, and we're not going to change our whole conglomeration of our house, state, chapter, et cetera, by next Thursday, So just don't pick up, go to meetings and talk about how you feel. Thank our panelists. Thank you very much.
My name's Chris, and I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we have a problem in my area with people leaving owing money and keeping track of that. Do any other states have anything implemented to help with that? I thought about making an actual service position of someone that could keep track of that. I didn't know if you guys had suggestions.
You say you're from Tulsa?
Yes.
Okay, well, I live on the other side of the state. So Texas has a very good system using their house emails, okay? Listen, communication is the key. It's not the end of the world, right? It's that topic has been chased for years, right? That's always going to be a topic. It's great that you see the need for it. By all means, try to figure something out. Ask around, talk to somebody from Texas. But at the end of the day, like I just had a deal the other day. There's this guy in Oklahoma City, and he's doing great. And he's a friend of mine. It's a friend of mine, an alumni member's cousin, right? And he's living in a house. And he's been in that house the last 3 months. And for the first time in his life, he's going to meetings every day. He's got a sponsor. And he's getting by. And he owes a house from 4 years ago, $500. And we find out about it after he's been there 3.5, 4 months. And the house he owes the money to, said forget about it. I think it is important that if a guy leaves a house owing money and runs right down the block and gets another house, that houses should honor each other and protect it. But at the end of the day, it's when it directly affects a house or another house, but it's not the end of the world. We don't, heck no, we don't want people house hopping. But how many times it took me to get it right? I'm better focused on going out and see how I can make my house better or make my chapter better. And when it bites us right in the tail, we do want to deal with it. We don't want people house hopping. I agree. And I encourage you to find a smooth way to do it. And when you do, you should probably patent it, right? Because there's probably something in it for you if you can find out an airtight way to do that. I know Texas has a pretty good system they're using.
All right, thank you.
So, real fast on that too, like we use a certain way in Delaware also, and we keep track of everybody's name on a spreadsheet. I talked about it yesterday. I think the spreadsheet totals over $50,000 in 2 years. And the idea is when somebody interviews, we need to make sure that we ask them, have you ever lived in an Oxford house? Do you owe them money? And our immediate response as a using addict is no. Right? My immediate response is always a lie. So make sure you call the house if they said they lived in one, right? If you recognize this person, I'm pretty good. If you call me and say, hey, does this person owe money? I'm pretty good. I know. So we keep track of it. And if the house does accept that person, the house is responsible to pay for it. And then the debt goes to the house that he lives in now. Right? And sometimes the house will settle. Like if he owes $600, give us $300. Right? Let's wash away half. Let's help him out. So that's what we do.
My name's Emily Martin, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. Yeah. So, let's see, I'm a Chapter 5 chair, but I'm alumni. So I moved, and I kept my position. And I'm having a really hard time with my chapter just because I feel like we're struggling really bad. It's like when we get into our meeting, we have really great discussions, but when that's over, it's like, okay, what happened to our ideas? What are we doing now? It's hard to find the follow through with it. And I'm having a hard time with that because, I struggle with it too sometimes. But I just really want to help, and I really want to see our chapter be successful. But it's like, how do you get people to follow through or be motivated or separate, find time with their jobs, because sometimes we have a hard time even getting people to go do 24 hours because people are working or they're tired or, so I just feel like our chapter is just struggling, even just financially. So I just kind of need some help here.
So I believe the question is on follow through.
Yeah.
And staying committed.
I got a lot of questions.
Anybody up here? Yeah.
So I was in a good meeting earlier, and the alumni were talking, and and this question was addressed. It's about doing what we're doing, not just talking about it. So you're showing up, and that's fantastic. So the people that you can make a connection with, like the example that she gave when she answered was like, you're nodding your head while I'm talking. You're acting like you understand what I'm saying. So instead of just after that meeting, everybody going to their separate places, attach yourself to her. Take her out for coffee. Go get tacos. I like tacos. Whoever mentioned that. And so everybody's not going to show up and want to do all of those things, but it feels good for somebody to see something in us that we don't see in ourselves. And if you can tell them all the positive things that you see in them and give them examples of how showing up for those chapters work and what it does for other people, then maybe it'll get them more involved. It doesn't, what do they say? 2% of the people do all the work, and it doesn't look like that because Oxford House is such a huge organization. And there are a lot of people doing a lot of things, but there's a lot of people who don't do a lot of things. So don't worry about the 10 that aren't, right? Attach yourself to the 2 or 3 that are, because they're going to get 2 or 3 more to do it. And it's just going to be a cycle that we want to be inside of. So care, compassion, make a relationship with the other women and men that are in your chapter, and talk about how you feel about wanting to make sure that this continues to happen for other people.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That's also, I think, another thing that goes back to what Dan was talking about earlier, lack of recovery, too. And commitment is a spiritual principle, right? And they talked about it in other panels too. There's a difference between being sober, clean, whatever you say, and being in recovery, right? Recovery is action, right? You got to put work in to get recovery, right? It doesn't happen through osmosis, right? It's like when my sponsees are like, hey, what are we doing? I'm like, I don't know. You haven't called in 4 weeks, right? Obviously you're not doing much. Because I can tell you it from my own experience, I have been one of those people living in an Oxford house with no recovery. And what happened to me was I was in the fetal position, clean, and didn't know what to do. I promise you that you don't want that. I promise you that, because it's very much more painful than going to the local detox when you're having opiate withdrawal. A spiritual detox is the worst detox you will ever go through. Stay connected, apply the principles, work with your sponsor, right? And like commitment follows. So, next question.
Hi, my name's Kat. I'm from the greater area of Seattle. Go Seattle. I'm the Chapter 25 Reentry Coordinator, and I just got nominated to that position, but we haven't had someone in that spot for a little while, almost like a couple years. So we had a guy for like a month, and then he relapsed out of it, and then they sent me here in that spot. So we've had a couple chapter meetings together to talk about it. The issue is that I had the state reentry coordinator come and talk to us, do kind of like a spiel about what it is and information to answer people's questions. He's gone to houses with me to talk to those houses. All our men's houses have said, they like nominated me, right? But all of them have said that they can't do it, that they don't have room, or it's gonna cost too much money to raise their rent, and the area is too great of a demand, all these reasons. And so the only people who are willing to do it is the 2 women's houses that we have, but all of my applicants have been men so far. And so my question is, even with all the information that they have been given, even with the state reentry coordinator and myself going to all these places, looking them out and like trying to get people to do it, they all vote on it, and they've brought it back to the last chapter meeting that we had, said that they aren't wanting to do it, they aren't willing to do it, they can't do it. And so my position is kind of nil at this point. What would your advice be on either going about that?
Are you asking what to do about getting the houses to accept someone coming in from an institution?
They're not even open to the idea. So, and I've talked to the reentry people here, so, yeah.
Yeah, so not like I want to take over the conversation, but I will talk about reentry. So I'm a woman who is a 3-time convicted felon, and if Oxford House had not opened up their doors, I would be dead. Yes. So having a real conversation is something that we do in recovery too. Sometimes we have to talk about the situation. So those houses where the people are living that don't want to accept someone from an institution inside of their house, you need to be asking them why Oxford House is for them. If we're not going into the institutions and taking it, then we're not saving lives. Asking people what they did or why they were in jail, oh my gosh, I could give you a crime sheet a mile long. But today, inside of my recovery, I'm a woman who genuinely cares and gives back what was given to me. So I feel as if I'm helping people daily because it was done.
Right, so.
You need to ask them why are they there.
Well, I've had, like, my reentry coordinator at the state one, he's been in prison, he's had time in prison, he's a felon. We have sat there and been like, okay, who's done any substances besides like alcohol and marijuana, like who could have gone to prison, like done the whole thing to try to get them to relate. We've had, asked who in the room has been from prison, done that whole thing, so I don't know. It's just, they just keep saying they can't do it, that they can't afford it, that they don't have room for it. Yeah, I know.
I've just never heard it, so it's
Y'all open a house. There we go.
Okay.
The idea would be open a reentry house.
That's
where they are
idea.
welcome.
Okay.
And those other people need to stop forgetting where they came from.
Okay.
I can, like, my experience, I have never been to prison, but listen, I'm all about people coming out of there. I go into the jail all the time. I sit and interview people in the jail. Like, I don't care where you came, I don't care what your charges are, right? How can we help you? Program is universal. How can we help you? I don't care what you did. Let's figure something out. How can we help? Last question.
Okay, my name's Mike. I'm an imperfect human being. So my question is more geared to, so the house that I live in is deemed by chapter as a sick house. We have a high turnover rate. Rent's pretty high. We live in a very nice area, so it's kind of hard for our EES to be paid. Rent's very high. So we have to pretty much be at full bed at all times to even be anywhere close to financial stability. So my question is, we have a lot of conflict of personalities within the house and the chapter. We're actually on a house contract with chapter. And so it's more not of a walk side by side to help members of the house, because a lot of us are new. Like, the whole house was evicted, and a lot of us that are in service positions have never been into Oxford. And so a lot of us that are in these positions are still learning. And it comes to, instead of helping, it's fining, and there's no actual direction. And I just want to know, how do we get out of that? It's very toxic. So our house meetings, when chapter comes in, it'll last from 7 to 9:30 at night. And after the end of these meetings, everyone's stressed. It's a very toxic environment, even for recovery. And it kind of, to me, defeats the whole purpose of what the principles of the organization is trying to stand for. And so and I'm probably going to be blasted after this video is released, but it just, any ideas, it's just, it gets out of hand. It's crazy.
Come on.
So you got to bring in some. Do you feel like you're alone in the situation?
No, definitely not.
You have chapter support. Do you feel that help is effective?
I'm sorry?
The chapter help that you're receiving, is it effective?
I don't feel like it is.
You got to go back to square one, man. You know, you obviously, you have members of that house that don't understand why they're there.
Okay.
Or it would be working effectively.
Okay.
Okay, how you solve that, where are you at? Where are you from?
Greater Nova area.
Where?
Greater Nova area. No,
Which,
Virginia.
Virginia?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to have to get some outside help.
Okay.
Okay, but you yourself, from you on down the line, it has to be very basic. Okay, we're going to pay our rent. We're going to practice our recovery. We're going to respect each other. We're going to come to the house meeting and apply ourselves. And somehow, some way, you got to get to that where those minimum requirements are being met. Or there should never be toxicity can happen, but what you've got to get to is a point where there is the few become the many that are doing those basic things. So if you're not able to achieve it, the chapter needs to help you do it. And if you're not getting the right support there, then the outreach may need to get involved. And if that's not happening, call Paul Malloy, but don't tell him I told you to. Right? I mean, but you yourself have to be doing those basic things.
So,
chore completion,
right.
The basic things it takes to live there.
So
the few become the many. That's got to be your sole focus.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Two real quick questions. My name is Shawn. I'm from Houston, Texas. In regards to reentry, well, they real little. That's why I said two little questions. About the objection, I heard her say that one of the objections of the house was we couldn't afford it. And so that's a little different than we don't want reentry in our house. And we've come up to that. What are your suggestions? Because I'm actively dealing with that in regards to raising resources, because the biggest pushback for us in Houston has been not the individuals, but being able to say we can afford to allow an individual to stay rent-free for a period of time to get on their feet, which is the expectation that we had with reentry.
Well, I attended a reentry panel last year at the convention. I thought it was absolutely beautiful that made the suggestion. No, let me take that back. It wasn't a suggestion. A house showed up to speak like you are, and they had took a vote to pay extra rent during the week so that they could save a certain amount of money so that they could help someone who was coming in. So if a house is financially stable, I love that idea. I mean, and it may not be for everybody, but I'd like to see more of it. Yeah.
Okay, and the other one is my first personal experience as a chapter officer, where people working, recovering, and having willingness, but getting there and not being able to follow through. Is there any advice, something or someone that I can call or who we can reach out to for the nuts and bolts of taking an idea to completion? Because I think that's a different thing. I work recovery, but I've never been a manager, or, I've never been in a position to say, hey, this is what I want to do. What are the steps 1 through 10 to make that happen? And then I get frustrated because the people are willing to work, but I don't have a plan to be able to carry that out. So who do we reach out for that?
Deshawn, was that your name?
Yeah, that's my name. Deshawn. Yes, sir.
Do you have my telephone number?
Yes, I do.
Well, then call me.
So as a chapter officer, I should call an outreach worker to be able to follow through on that.
So if you're having an issue with like following through, right, and you want to talk to someone else, how many people do you have in your recovery network that you can ask for their experience, strength, and hope, right? I go to AA, and what I've learned in AA is that I go to other people who have gone through, like if I go to my sponsor and my sponsor hasn't gone through something that I'm going through, then my sponsor will be like, hey, you need to find somebody else over here in your home group who's gone through that experience, and you need to ask them about it, right? So I'm telling you the same thing. You need to go to somebody who's in your recovery network, and you need to ask them for their experience, strength, and hope. It doesn't always necessarily have to be an outreach worker or a chapter officer, or maybe it is an outreach worker or a chapter officer, but it's up to you to find somebody that you can get to share their experience, strength, and hope with you.
Hey, we got to wrap this panel up, but there's something I want to say real quick because I wouldn't be able to sleep if I didn't. All this talk about having to do reentry or having that's got to go. That's got to go. Why do you have to do anything? Your house is autonomous. Reentry is done out of kindness from the people within the home that have the money to do it, that aren't worried about money. And if anybody's standing over the top of you telling you you have to do it, they need to read their manual. Reentry is done from people that want to do it. MAR is done from people that want to do it. Whatever situation it is, we are not no house is obligated to do anything except kick people out that use or drink, vote on their issues, and operate democratically. Nobody has to do anything.
So I'll admit when I'm wrong as well, so I got emotional about reentry because when I'm looking up here at these guys, I'm like, but it's just because I don't think we shouldn't give somewhere someone to stay. But he's exactly right because the manual doesn't say that it is something that we have to do.
Have a good day and enjoy your lunch.